And start the stream. Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Hello. I'm MS Business. I'm going to be your host today from the Conclave of Aratar. We're just here in the Ancient Grove, a new segment that we're trying out here at the Community Conclave 360 channel. And Aratar. We're just here in the Ancient Grove. We're just looking around. That we're trying out here at the Community Conclave 360. Boom. Sorry for the feedback. Anyway, trying out at the Conclave 360 channel to ignite some conversations about COE games that are coming up. And if any of you have been hiding under a rock, maybe you didn't notice that Atlas was supposed to come out a few days ago, and then it was supposed to come out yesterday. And there's been a lot of hype. There's been a lot of excitement about Atlas as a game, somewhat similar to COE. And if you were paying attention to their Discord last night, things kind of exploded. So we're going to talk with some community members and get some people to jump in here about, hey, when we talk about these early access games and we have games like COE, what are the things that we as community members expect, and what do we get excited about, and what lets us down, and how do we manage those expectations? And if we kind of drift off topic from COE and Atlas, don't be alarmed. We're gonna take this pretty naturally here. I've got Amory in the Ancient Grove. This is a public channel in the Conclave Discord. And if you're tuning in as a Aratari and you have access to this channel, please feel free to jump in, introduce yourself, and say, hey, this is what I am in the community, account, citizen, an excited gamer, and this is what I think. And so feel free to jump in, jump out, and we'll try to make time for you to get your introductions and let your voice be heard and participate. Get out, participate. Isn't that the great thing about these early access games, Amory? Right? We get to be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the great opportunities that we get to have with a tight knit community. We get to meet great new people with games like this. There's a lot of great excitement behind it. The only thing that's disappointing is the delay, of course, but hopefully they just overall just give us a better product.
Yeah, no, like we've got a good group of people here waiting for Atlas come out. And how many do we have sitting in Discord yesterday? I mean, it was close to 20, 25 people sitting there, maybe more. I didn't count. I was doing dishes.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point that you bring up. I think we probably had around I'd say at least 20 people, and those are just the people that could make it at time. And I think what's great is we're if we have this amount of support just from the conclave alone, you also have to think about what Vornair thinks and how they're gonna also bring their people in it. If we get enough people that like the game right from the get go in the first few weeks, I think we'd see more people in the conclave jump ship, I guess.
Jump ship. Yep. No. I mean, good Atlas little tidbit there. Yeah, punny. I think Almore jumped in here too. I don't know. I didn't hear him as he was talking. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's
Yeah, I'm
not.
here.
Oh, perfect.
I just I jumped in and I was trying not to interrupt, so apologies.
No problem. Almore, your account with the conclave here. Amory, your high elder of strategy. I forget the exact position
Elder.
there. Just
Elder.
elder.
Elder of tactics. My bad.
Elder of Tactics. Elder of Tactics. Yep. So we have some leadership people here. And we were all sitting inside that Discord. And so Atlas, they threw that timer down on their website. Do you feel like that was a tease? There's a lot of butthurt around the Atlas community about this timer and setting up these expectations for that timer's going to hit zero. I'm going to hit buy this game, and then my life is going to be stuck to the computer screen for the next foreseeable future. Like, how do we react to that?
Well, here was my initial thought on that whole issue. They delayed it once already, right? I believe it was the 13th was the original release date, and then they delayed it to the 19th. And then obviously they delayed it again to the 21st. So we've heard, anyways. My initial thought was, look, they gave us a timer because that's when they wanted to get the game out, right? I mean, I don't know. I haven't personally developed the game, but I can imagine the type of issues that could arise at a moment's notice. So last night, especially since they didn't announce anything until 45 minutes after 6 o'clock Eastern, my initial thought was, okay, they've got a game. They've got a decent game. But when they were doing their final test, something happened. And I don't know what that was. I don't know what that is. However, I believe that the game is ready now. I think it's good to go at this moment. I believe they delayed it 2 more days just to cover, their ass basically. I think that it was just at that brink of, okay, we can release this now and basically crash instantly, or we can just delay it 2 more days and know that we have 48 hours to fix this, like this one issue. That's how I see what happened yesterday. You guys are welcome to comment on that. So
Yeah. I also have mixed feelings. I have not to go on too much of a tangent. I have mixed feelings. I'm not personally, disappointed in the pushback. I think it was the problem with the whole PR sense. They didn't give really any sense. There was like a little tidbits if you caught it in the Discord, and everyone in the Discord, was almost flaming them. Same with the Steam, on Steam, Reddit, all over across their social media outlets. They were getting almost bombarded about it because there was just a disconnect of what's going on. Why aren't we getting a product? Why aren't we unable to buy? And it was just unfortunate because they actually had a huge following on Twitch. They were number one on Twitch. Everyone was ready for this game. They had almost, I think, 200,000 people just in gear, ready to watch this. Ready to watch this game unfold. And I just feel like they shot themselves in the foot with this. And I don't know if it's because of the reputation reputation with Wildcard, since Grapeshot is developing Atlas, and it's a sister company of Wildcard, which made Ark, and everyone knows the notorious problems with Ark and problems with their devs and the lack of just I don't know how you would describe just doing.
I'll add into that. I don't believe they have much of a PR team. If you look at their Twitter, they haven't tweeted anything except for this month, December. Their website in general was basically high school level. Just a video embed, like an embed video, and then a Steam link. That's all their website was. I don't believe that they have a team out there marketing very heavily. I think that they put all their assets into actual development, which is why, I think I've heard somewhere that this game was only being developed for a year. Pretty much right after Extinction came out, they kind of jumped on this, or actually before, which is why a lot of people didn't like Extinction, which was I guess the Ark DLC. But yeah, and just in general, I don't think that they've had the PR necessary, or the PR that they thought they would need it, because it's already been said that this is not the game to replace Ark. They are still going to be producing content, still going to be producing DLCs for Ark. This game is just going to be like its cousin, its sister, its brother. Like, this game they didn't expect this many people. I can guarantee you they didn't expect this many people to be this interested. So yeah.
I would agree with that. I didn't think they would. I don't know. It seems like they just sort of put a shot out there, and they shot a flare up in the sky, and they want to see who's all responding to it. And I guess the response was pretty overwhelming for what we've seen, because everyone thinks that this is going to be the next big thing, next big MMO, or something that people are jumping at. I think they actually had an apology about what happened yesterday, but it was sort of like an apology, sort of like, hey, this is why this happened, in a way, or they didn't give why, but just sort of gave some clarification of why there was no response and why everything was just hush hush, and it's like, oh, here you are. They pretty much, from what I got from a tidbit I got from the Discord, was one of the developers got on and said, hey, everyone's working crucially, all hands on board, we're going at it, we're trying to work out all the problems. He's like, the games it's gonna get pushed back. We're sorry for this. It's the reason why no one's responding to this is because we have so many people trying to work on it. And I don't know, I just felt like it was not the best of way to go about it, and they didn't tag, it wasn't pinned, it wasn't at everyone, and I just felt like it just wasn't a proper apology.
So
yeah, I will. Go ahead.
So yeah, no, I want to focus us. You brought up two things about Elmore and Amory. So Elmore, you're talking about the lack of the PR team, and I think we've got some good potential to talk about. What does PR and community outreach, and what do these companies really need to be doing in terms of their advertisement and how they interact with their community in order to be successful. And then Amory, you brought up some things about Arc, and I wasn't at Arc at the beginning, but I'm part of a server that's very heavy into the Arc game and has been there since early access and on release. And you talk to these guys who've played Arc and were there since the beginning. You're like, oh yeah, no, our bet's on Christmas Eve, if not later. This seems pretty quintessential for those developers, to expect that sort of thing. And so, like, when we talk about early access, do we feel that there's this expectation that early access can miss those dates? They can say, we're going to say on the 25th, oh wait, the 27th, oh, and they can reschedule these things, and people are understanding of that? Or is this really a lack of marketing teams and advertising teams on those early access titles, and do they need to maybe devote a few people to their only job at the company is to say, we're going to put this out across different platforms, or we're going to market this, and then we're going to make commitments, and those people making those commitments then have to go back to the game developers and say, we need to make this commitment. This is a commitment that, even if we're committing to something later in time, we're like, making those goals does drive a lot of inclusion, a lot of confidence in these early access titles. So yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Did you guys have any experience with the early Arc release and the bugs and stuff that were evident in those early releases?
Yeah, I can give a little bit of insight on that. When I started out with Arc, I think I'd say I played. I think I picked it up around 2 month mark of their release, and it seemed like everyone and their mother was playing it at the time. So I was like, why not? And when I loaded up, I was just bombarded by just lag. I don't know if it was a system lag, server lag, but it seemed like it was like a little bit of everything. Was just sort of just bugs galore, lag, and I honestly did not like the game. Granted, it was early access, so I couldn't really give my full input about it, and I understood that. But at the time it released, it was something that I was not willing to play. So I didn't. I actually, I think, only played for about hour and a half or something like that, and then I stopped playing it, waited 6 months, and then they started revamping and started working out all the kinks, and I had no problem playing after that. And then they started adding the futuristic update, and that's when I sort of left off.
Yeah, I personally was not there for the beginning of Arc. I think I got into it. I'm not actually sure when, but I just know that my friend invited me to it. Played a little while, especially on the official servers, which had, to me, the most issues with bugs and stuff. That being said, I have played other early access games, in particular Conan Exiles, which was in early access for around, a year, maybe two. I can't exactly remember. But we got that. I bought that game on launch of early access. It was delivered on launch of early access. However, and this goes back to the same thing with Atlas. When Conan Exiles was delivered early access on time, I believe it had a solid week of crashes, bugs, just issues in general. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier about Atlas. Like, if they found this issue literally an hour before they were about to launch the early access game, I think that developers do have the right. I think they have the right, especially because I don't believe they have, and I'm looping PR and marketing together. I don't believe they have a marketing team. I believe that they do as Studio Wildcard, but they didn't really push it. They didn't really use it to its full capability. That being said, I do believe that the developers do have that right, especially in early access, to say, hey, if we release this to you now, there's going to be a lot more bitching than, 2 days of complaining. You know what I mean? Like, so to me, it kind of makes sense, but so there's two sides to every story. So
yeah, I agree. To piggyback off that, if we take a little bit step back, go off of what you said about the marketing and PR team, this game was just sort of thrown at us like suddenly, like very suddenly. I mean, it was leaked 4 or 5 months ago, and it was just like I don't even know if it was like a teaser thing, and it was an accidental thing. And now we actually had definitive evidence that this is a company that is now has a release date and everything. Just what we learned about a month ago at the Game Awards, and now everyone's like, "Whoa, what is this game?" So they really had like a short timeline of things, and I think a lot of people, I think why they did that was so they didn't build up this hype and followed by all these disappointments of when's the game coming out, and like they lose people. They don't
Yeah, I
want
agree
this
to that.
ridiculous timeline that they released 5 months ago, and then everyone forgets about it. So I think that's sort of smart that it as fast. I think, but the issue is right now it is not that the game was pushed back. The issue is how they handled it.
Yeah, I agree. The response given back to the community was poor, to say the least. um,
So here's
but
an
yeah,
interesting question off that. You talk about the response being poor. Almor, you were into Conan Exiles from early on. I remember playing like the Elder Scrolls Online beta and those early releases. What is it about games that do it right, that really pulls you in and allows you to continue playing them? Because we've all gone through early access, at least, it's a bit of an assumption, I guess, but we've gone through early access games, and you get into them, and it is like somebody did not do their homework. Nobody put the effort they need to. They're way too premature, and they lose those communities. The ones that worked, and you were talking about Conan Exiles. How did they do things right? How did they turn things around and keep you included in those early access games?
I think that the first step to that is just admitting that you messed up. You know what I mean? Once developers realize that they can tell a community, "Hey, we didn't calculate this right, or we didn't test this enough, and it broke, but we promised to fix it." The community is going to either act in one or two ways. In this community for Atlas, I'm not sure how I would react. I mean, we were all in that Discord last night. Um, I don't know. At least I will say that I think that if there's a game to play when you promise that there's going to be a game to play, no matter what happens to that game in the next week, a month, however long it takes to get those issues resolved, the community is going to be a lot more understanding. If you continue to delay a game and have limited response to that community about why, or limited apologies, I think that it just gets worse. I think that's when you start to lose people. And Conan, the developers over there, Funcom, they did a great job with that. I mean, they were constantly active, telling people like, here, we know this issue. Please report another issue if you find it, that type of thing, which I'm sure Atlas will do. I mean, let's not forget it is Studio Wildcard. They're used to this. And I feel like that might be another issue. Like, we're not really focusing enough on who these developers are. And I tried to hint at it as much as I could before this happened, or before we all got in the Discord last night. Studio Wildcard is not known, right? And that's why these old art players are like, yeah, we understand, man. It's probably not going to come out till next year. Studio Wildcard is not known to be very responsive. They're not known to be very trustworthy when it comes to, hey, we're going to deliver this at this time. They're just not that type of developers. They just aren't. They never have been, and they probably never will. However, they do release awesome games. I think Arc is awesome. I think that this new type of MMO is an awesome concept, and that I think it'll work great. I just don't think that communities in Atlas should get extremely tied up in the fact that, man, they didn't tell us this, or man, they got delayed again. That's going to happen, and if you talk to any old Arc players, they will say the same thing. So, I mean, that's just what it is. Every developing company is different. So,
Welcome, Elder. Great points, Elmore. I definitely agree. I mean, that's really the opinions that we're seeing across, experienced ARC players and people who've interacted with the studio in the past. Welcome, Elder Thomas Ferrister. He's our Elder of Treasury, Elder of Commerce, ambiguous name there. He's also a count in the conclave here, and we're going to listen if he chooses to give his opinion about things that we're talking about right now. Atlas early access games and what those things mean to COE. What we were talking about a second ago, Almar, with that communication between the developers and the studio. Like it really warms my heart. Well, that's an interesting phrase. Warms my heart when Caspian, the executive producer on the Chronicles of Elyria, comes out and he talks to the community, whether it's through the Discord or through the updates in the COE site, and lets us know what's going on, lets us know why they didn't make make a deadline, or sometimes the community has been aggressive when a deadline hasn't been met in the past. They've been doing a really good job recently, but being able to come back to the community and say, hey, this is the things that are going on. We're working really hard, and we understand you're putting your community's heart and soul into the development of this game. And I think that means a lot. Like it feels to mean a lot to me. I don't want a brown nose for Caspian, unless of course he wants to send some EP my way for the brown nosing. But I think you're right there. That relationship, the trust that you build between a developer and the community. I mean, that's a lot of what these early access games really they sell. That's so much different than main release games. Like you could get Modern Warfare 1 and 2. I haven't looked at Call of Duty in so long. I don't know the newer titles. But you just pick those up at the store, but you never felt like you were involved in developing them. And now with these early access titles and this new market model, us as gamers really get to start influencing things, or at least we feel like we get influencing things. We're involved.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I will say, just in general, I've never been in a game or dealt with a game that is so close knit with the community as COE. I think it's awesome. I think that obviously it's a community driven, community built game. I think that's just something so new that a lot of people who have been playing, especially on PC, right? I mean, console is a little bit different in my opinion, because that you have a console, you go pick it up at GameStop or order it on Amazon, and you play the game. But with PC, it's just a different type of community in my opinion. And that's where people, PC is number one, that type of thing. That's where that comes from. But just being in COE, like, and then going to another game like Atlas, where they have a completely different type of marketing module or developing module or anything like that. Like, it's just trying to compare the two developing companies is almost impossible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like you're saying, we're really seeing a development about gaming in general, and I don't want to make too many assumptions. I don't want to walk down too many planks. But you really started seeing these changes when these discussions around the new developers, which I think COE was one of the first ones that I really heard about that said, hey, we want to do this different. We're taking a model that's not in, a marketing model that's not in line with the way that EA games or some of the larger studios were doing it from the get-go. And these games are, they're new and they're really exciting and stuff like that. As we talk about early access and relating things about Atlas to Chronicles of Elyria. Chronicles of Elyria and what that means. The feeling is that when we look forward to games like Chronicles of Elyria and we look forward to games like Atlas, do we see the studios going down the similar paths? And I think what we were talking about, Almore, how the Chronicles of Elyria Soulbound Studios, being in line, being communicative with their population, that's a very healthy sign for our game, and that we should expect that relationship to develop further. Yeah. Sorry.
No, I mean, I just think that in general, I think that in the future, and I classify COE and as well as Star Citizen, I classify those as new age MMOs. Mainly because it changes the marketing and the development, procedures of all these major, companies. And I don't think that companies like EA or what's the other Blizzard, even Studio Wildcard, I don't think that they're going to be able to adapt, because more and more people are becoming used, like especially when Star Citizen releases, because I think that it will come out before COE. It's the only reason I say it first. When Star Citizen releases, if it's a hit, every single developing company is going to have to change their type of basically everything. They're going to have to change everything. And the only reason I say that, right, I don't have any insider information or anything, but everyone who plays those games is going to get accustomed to being able to put something on the forums and have an actual developer respond to them, or having someone who works in the company, development company, marketing team, whatever, respond to them. That doesn't always happen at Ubisoft or EA or anything like that. It doesn't happen. And if that doesn't happen 5 to 10 years from now, those games are going to become, hey man, I'm bored. I don't really want to play anything on Star Citizen or COE. You want to go pick up some Call of Duty, and play like 5 games and then hop back on. That's what that's going to become. They're going to become things of the past, in my opinion. Um, if you don't have constant communication, because we're all people, right? We all want to have, and I'm not saying that we're all, I think it also does have something to do with the generations. I think that the newer generation does have more need, if that makes sense. They have more desire to be involved. Um, that type of thing. It's also a lot easier to get technology. A kid off the street can become a programmer or a developer of a game, a Kickstarter game like that, like snapping your fingers in today's time. 10 years ago, it wasn't that easy. So I do think that as time progresses, those Studio Wildcard, they're all going to have to adapt and evolve into the COE, Robert Space Industries, that type of module, in my opinion.
What do you think here, Amory? Is game development, it just, not to say the SUI have it right, but do you agree with us that we really think that COE has been really early, Soulbound has been really early on the bandwagon here towards what the community is asking for when it comes to game development, and we expect other labels to be really following suit in a lot of those community engagement and community activity events, or as we talk about early access and development of video games.
See, that's very interesting that you bring that up, because there's a lot of things at play here. Because we live at an age now where technology is on the rise, and any company can hear the voices of the customer and see what the customer wants. And you see games. One game recently, like Bethesda and EA has had issues with, is if you don't give what the customer wants, and if you don't like adapt or just outright do things that the customer won't like, people won't buy your game, and it'll hurt you as a company. So there has to be that adaptation uh, to want to change and change for the better, and try to make your customers happy, and always have a positive customer relationship with your product. And I think Chronicles of Elyria being so open as they are, the whole Soulbound Studios as a whole, just being so open that open that Caspian is in channel, constantly talking with people, which is awesome. So we know what's happening, and he's not afraid to answer any questions that he's allowed to essentially answer, I guess. But yeah, it's great that anyone can contact pretty much anyone on the team if they have a quick question or something like that, or just try to figure out some information.
Yeah, no. How long have you, Almore and Amory, and I don't remember how long Ferrister here has been with the Soulbound Studios community, a part of their forums, their website, and whatnot. I have a very fond memory of, oh gosh, almost 2 years ago at this point, and the developers were just releasing their developer journals at that time, and it was one of the single digit editions, but they were talking about the idea of how long a Illyrian day is, and how do lifespans go about, and the aging and all this other stuff. And I remember writing a comment, and it probably would have been a page 3 or a page 4 comment on the forums on this development journal, and Caspian wrote a response, and as a supporter, as a gamer, as somebody who wants to be involved in the development and get excited over communicating with the developers, butterflies in the stomach, first time on a prom date kind of thing, and that really really affected the outlook and the effort that at least myself am willing to put towards the community. I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful life. No, wait. It's a wonderful thing to see. But let's realign ourselves just a little hair here. And when we talk about these early access games, I've got a note here. You know, we were talking about the Discord on Atlas before, and if you joined that Discord yesterday and got to see the sheer chaos, oh, it was. I don't attribute myself as a terribly hungry troll, but that Discord and the chaos on it was delicious. It was so funny to watch because these expectations we develop as gamers around early access and seeing everybody just go crazy because the studio hadn't released exactly what people were expecting, or it was an inevitability. Like, these early access titles are going to have some issues and you're going to work through them like we talked about. But seeing that Discord, like, well, how do you compare what you saw on the Atlas Discord last night to things we've seen with event drops in COE? Like, what's the difference, what's the same, and what are some highlights from last night that you can remember?
Well, I'd say is you see differences in how both development teams handle things. No matter what Soulbound Studios does, there's always going to be a handful of people that will just disagree. Whether it just be like, I don't know, lack of focusing on one specific area, and they address that and they say, well, we're working on it, and they try to at least try to segment things out into what you'll expect in the next coming months, and I say that's a better thing to do, so people have a expectation to what they will be adhering to in the next couple of months. But rather than what happened with this drop, it was more like a bait. It was they were baiting people in, and all of a sudden just switch right at the last second for a trailer, and I feel like that's just very disingenuous to the customer on what they were doing there.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, the main difference that I see in COE or Soulbound Studios and their procedures compared to maybe a larger development team such as Studio Wildcard is Soulbound Studios. This is their first game. They're very informative. I don't want to go into too much information, but a lot of the community is aware of the type of event that's going to be released before the event is even released. And by a lot of people, I mean the people that have donated a certain amount of money. So a lot of us go into COE updates or events that drop knowing, okay, this is what it's going to be like. We can kind of prepare, at least in the, I want to say, upper management level. We can kind of prepare for these type of things so that everyone in the other community who might have, or in the lower bit of the community who might not have as much information or as much understanding when the event drops, we can kind of help them, guide them along. When you have something like Atlas, or let's even go back to Arc, where there's really no communication with, what is say, heavy sponsors of the game, if there even is such a thing. Whenever they release information, everyone gets it for the first time. So last night, when they say this game's going to come out, at 6 o'clock Eastern, right? Everyone believes that. No one is in the background saying, okay, well, there's a high possibility that this game won't come out until after Christmas or middle of January. Like, I'm just giving random numbers, but there's none of that. There's no, and then it directly relates to the evolution that these companies are going to have to go through. I mean, it's going to happen regardless. I mean, you can tell by how active and popular Atlas is, right? Because this is, even though they don't have a great communication, this is an MMO type that has never been done before, other than maybe Eve, but even then it's completely different. And then like COE, just the amount of people who are invested in COE and Star Citizen at this time, it just shows you like where MMOs are going, and if they don't adapt, they fall, and that's just how it is. So
Yeah, I like. So you bring up Eve, near to my heart, near and dear. And I mean, Eve followed a very similar marketing management strategy as Atlas has at this point. I mean, you follow traditional communication channels, and then you drop the game, and albeit they didn't do it. We're going to talk about it a month before Christmas, and we're going to drop it for Christmas, and this or that. But yeah, that development. definitely very, very interesting. The Phoenician on the Twitch chat said, middle management represent, and then I like that statement. It's a real nice statement because I do like how the Soulbound Studios has created this dichotomy of representation. We have people who are in the 10K IP channel, and they're able to get some information from the studios, and not necessarily like it's NDA information. You're not supposed to disseminate it publicly, but there's a degree of filtering expectations, and it helps smooth out, like you said, those releases down the line. Right now, we've got the oh gosh, what's the event called? It's not the Tomb Raider, but I keep thinking of it as the Tomb Raider event. It's got all
The Vault.
The Vault, yes. Indiana Jones kind of naming convention there, but that event is more or less prepared for, such that you get a successful release, like the Burning Plague and the Free Kingdoms of Elyria. Like those, if we look back and compare it to other early access game launches and crowdfunding and all these other campaigns that happen in the developing new game communities, like that's new to some degree. That's like it. I feel like it's what's done right. What do you guys think? What we've seen across the Vault event and the Free Kingdoms of Elyria and the Plague, Searing Plague event. Like how has that influenced our participation as community members? And what do you feel about that?
Well, I feel like it does two great things. One, it keeps people on their toes. We don't like when these events drop. They're sudden. So you have that shock and awe, and everyone's like, "Oh man, we have to gather up." It forces the community members to get in their groups and figure out how should we do this, what's the best way of tackling this. And the second thing is, it impacts the game, and that's massive. It's great. It's revolutionary because you have a game that's not even released yet, and there's already ways players can influence the game just because off of things like the Searing Plague, and now I forget what the event is going on right now. The Tombs.
It's Raiders of the Lost Vault, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Raiders of the Lost Vault. Yep, that sounds correct. And in this way, you get in-game items, mostly in-game items, unless you're lucky and you're one of the people that get one of the two items of the EP or the Sparks of Life. But yeah, it makes community members work together. Not so much in this one, but in past ones, especially with the Searing Plague, it forces community members to work together and cooperate with each other into trying to defeat a common enemy. And in the Searing Plague, it wasn't just like it was like a kingdom versus kingdom type of thing. It was the whole continent of Elyria trying to defeat a common enemy.
I mean, arguably, it's the community against the devs, and
True.
you at least you could see it. You can pretend it's that. You can see it that way, and it's kind of fun sometimes to think of it like that. And you got the shaft, what beat you, even though if they wanted to fudge the numbers on that, they would have every ability to do that. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I don't want to give too much credit to COE or Soulbound because I don't believe that this event, the Vault event, is the greatest. I believe it makes sense. It's Christmas time. They're here to obviously boost funding a little bit. It does give some really good rewards, especially for the Oceanus server. I think that's an awesome way to get that server a little bit more active and populated. But going back to the Searing Plague, that event was possibly the greatest they've ever done. Now, again, I'm sure that the next event will be even cooler because it won't be Christmas time when people have all this money that they really need. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, just in general, COE, like their development module, like it just keeps coming back. It's like a giant loop, right? Like, again, it's a little bit easier for COE because of how the game is structured itself, with players actually being involved in the politics of the game rather than an NPC or anything like that. So it's a little bit easier for them to maintain that level of trust because, like the king, for instance, he needs to be in direct contact with the devs because otherwise that would be an NPC that we would all be following, right? And the devs would, basically code him. So now that it's a player, they have to have that direct contact. And again, so do the Dukes and Duchesses, and so far, keeps going down. I think that having that 10K IP level is great. I think that helps because, if it was just the king or the dukes and duchesses, right? That's like 7 people, or maybe a little bit more, maybe like 10 people, at least for Vornair. 10 people compared to what are we at, like 18K or 1.8K? That doesn't give a lot of thought. It doesn't give a lot of brainstorming. So when these events come out, like the Searing Plague, having more people who are able to jump in and start planning before the event comes out, with that NDA, they're able to, kind of act against it quickly. So, that's just it's just part of it. And again, going back to like wildcard and that, they don't have that module. And again, giant loop here goes back to it's going to have to happen. It's going to have to. I'm surprised I didn't have that kind of thing with Atlas. 1 second. Yeah, so going back to Atlas, the reason I feel like Atlas was kind of like kept secret, discretion, is because they don't want to take too much from Arc. Going back to what I said previously, Arc is not over. They still have that development team. They're still making DLCs for Arc, all that kind of stuff. They don't want to lose too much interest in Arc by Atlas. So I think that they hurt themselves to try to help themselves. And what I mean by that is whenever they made that announcement about Atlas, it instantly blew up because it's the game that everyone not necessarily has been waiting for, but it's a game that everyone can fit into. It's the game that Sea of Thieves was meant to be. And they just didn't. I don't know why they didn't see it like that. So because of that, we're at the situation we're at now. Now, if they would have released, if they kind of were moving on from Arc, I think that we would have seen a new age marketing plan, a new age development plan, where early access would have been on time, players would have had more involvement, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't want that. They wanted this to be a sister game to Arc, and bam, we're at where we're at now. So.
Yeah, and so I want to pick on something you said there, so Atlas, the idea of Atlas, the game Atlas being, what's the Sea of Thieves was really supposed to be, or what the community expected amongst that. And I was never involved in the Sea of Thieves, and I haven't played the game, or was not, I didn't do any homework on what that development schedule looked like. But from what you know, Al, more about the Sea of Thieves, did that follow the same kind of release schedule as we were seeing Atlas follow? Was it a more community involved? Was it more early access? I don't know the answer to these things, so I'm going to rely on yours and the community's experience and information on this in order to answer that. If the Sea of Thieves did what COE is doing, would it be Atlas,
Yes.
or something like that?
Yeah, the simple answer is yes. Everyone who plays Sea of Thieves, and I'm actually not an avid player, but everyone who is, if they had their hands kind of in the cookie jar and were able to give input that devs would actually take and incorporate into Sea of Thieves, we wouldn't need a game called Atlas. Sea of Thieves is a great game. It doesn't have the content. It doesn't have the content to keep players active. It doesn't have, for instance, government mechanics, land claim mechanics. It's basically, if you take Atlas and take the PvP and possibly some of the fantasy type things with like the skeletal warriors, all that type of thing, that is Sea of Thieves. Now, if you add in land claim mechanics, survival mechanics, all that type of stuff, then now you have Atlas. So if Sea of Thieves would have instantly opened up a direct communication channel where they actually paid attention and were interested in continuing development of the early access game, then, we could have never, Atlas might have still been a thing because I believe Atlas was in development before Sea of Thieves actually became popular, or a game in general. Then we wouldn't be where we're at, so, but that's just part of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out that title. I need more time in my day. A budget for my game time, budget for my stream time, and we're gonna have to do some shuffling around in in a number of these things. I don't remember if we talked about this earlier in here, and if we don't want to circle back to it, we don't have to. But I've got a note written down as something that I was thinking about as we were talking here, and it's why do people play early access games? What brings you into an early access game? And if you're listening, please tell us your opinions. But early access costs money. It's going to be a diamond in the rough, or maybe a rougher cut of the end product. Why do we reach for these things? And what pulls us to those titles?
See, I always think that it's very interesting because if you think about it, a few years ago, um, game companies actually used to pay people to test their games and break their games and stuff like that. Now we're doing the opposite, and I think that's because people when people see game trailers, they immediately get this hype of, man, I can't wait to play this game. And I think the game companies can sort of capture that, okay, we can get this product out before the hype dies and people can see what our games are about. And that's a good and bad thing. If people have the expectation that this is a nice polished game that they're releasing and can work functionally, no problems, that's when you're going to have issues. And that's what I think a lot of people have going into games, expecting, this is supposed to not lag, servers are going to work flawlessly. And that's some of the issues with it. But I think what is good about it is people have a better understanding of what they're gaining as a game and what they expect to have when the game's fully released. So sometimes there are games that work very well in early access. I think it's the Wild 8 is one, and the Forest is another, that are two very good games that were pretty much polished and most of the content was there. And I think that's how early access games should be done in those retrospects, is that you have most of the game there. It's mostly just fixing up this buggy mess and maybe adding in new additions to either like a weapons arsenal or some type of machinery, something new to mix in. And that's how early access games should capture people, is giving them something to play before the whole game is over, and then have a better experience to what they're getting.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that early access basically translates to beta testing. I think that the reason early access is becoming more and more popular is because the games are becoming more and more cooler. You know what I mean? If that's a word, I think it is. But anyways, like for instance, right? Call of Duty still does beta testing, but you don't expect much to change from that game, right? You don't expect it to be much different from the regular launch. So you pay, I believe, to get into like beta for Call of Duty, you pay in like final copy price, right? They might actually do a free period, like a free week of Call of Duty testing. I don't know. I don't play Call of Duty that much anymore. I just know that games that, from what I've seen, anyways, games that run on the Unreal Engine, games that are massive multiplayer online RPGs, games that have huge, and I mean huge, areas of land for you to explore. Those type of games, you see more and more of those where you're paying to test it because of how much interest it draws from the public. And again, giant loop here is going back because Call of Duty, they can't get that. They can't. If people had to pay to test Call of Duty, how many people would do it? In all honesty, how many people would do it? Not much, because it's the same game, reskin over and over again. Might have a new map. That's pretty much it. But these games, every one of them is different. Every one of them. The map sizes are different. I mean, COE is supposed to be what? How many Skyrims? How many Skyrim maps combined into one single landmass? It's unreal. And again, Unreal Engine. So that's where I think that all the hype to pay for early access comes from.
Yeah. Like, what strikes me as interesting is, in the traditional game release model with, early access going to, well, I always think of it as more or less trusted game reviewers, people who either work for a label or a company or have done it before. They've got some sort of access into the label, and they go through and they look at this game. But what you're almost buying with the traditional early access model, where it goes out to specific streamers or specific content producers, is this publicity. PC Gaming Magazine sends somebody and they get a copy of it, and you're expected to sit there and play Call of Duty or Battlefield or Blue Dragon or Fable for X hours and really write a thoughtful and in-depth review of the game, probably in support of it. And now in the media world that we live in, there's this term we've got, this prosumer term. It's a combination of producer and consumer, where us as community members, as consumers, we make streams where we talk about what we think about games and drive some conversations about what's going on with the studio and all this other stuff. It's free advertisement, like you were talking about earlier with Ark and Grape Shot and Sea of Thieves and all these other early access games. Like when the community gets involved, when they influence the game, that is mind power that those developers are able to use to guide their game to something that the community is willing to buy. Like you can create Chronicles of Elyria today in Minecraft, and maybe people will buy it and maybe people won't. But if you're able to mold that into a more developed process, into a better product, more people are going to buy it. And I think that plays a huge role in the release and access of these games, is that really that role of the prosumer, the role of content creators, that augment the studio's ability to release them.
Mm-hmm. Segueing a little bit back to your one comment about how they have people like or some type of media professional, whether it be like streaming or some sort of game reviewer. They're actually doing that for Atlas right now. A little tidbit just got really released. Honestly, I think within 30 minutes ago, Soda Poppin was streaming, and he actually said that there is a I don't know. It's almost like I don't know if it's a lottery or some sort of list, and the Grape Shot devs pick people to stream Atlas before the game comes out. But I guess that's there's an actual thing. There's an actual plan to actually have that out to the streamers, since they felt like they were being very disingenuous to a lot of them from yesterday. So I think there actually is plans for that. I don't know if it's. I think it's going to end up being tonight. I'm not too sure, but people were saying if they are going to do something like this, they are not going to actually incorporate that. Like none of the things that these streamers are doing are actually going to be tied into the official servers. It's going to be like a private sandbox type of server.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think that giving streamers, I mean, people go to watch streamers because of what the streamer does. I mean, most of these streamers who have made it big, right? They don't necessarily, now some of them are. Ninja, for instance, is a great gamer as well as a great streamer. But a lot of these, like Soda Poppin, for instance, is not an esports gamer, in my opinion. I think that he is a great personality and a great fit for streaming. And I think that giving streamers the access to play a game before it's able to be played by the entire community is a great way to build reputation. Because these streamers are going to be honest. You know what I mean? They're, most of them anyways. I guess some of them could be paid to say what they want to say, but at least the ones I've watched play early access games, they don't really bullshit you. They tell you what's the problems, they tell you what's good and what's not, and people can get that content that people are looking for before they make the purchase. And I think that is a great PR stunt, especially after what happened last night, so that we can go watch these streamers play the actual game, even though it's not on the official server, and we can get an idea of our heads, or in our heads now, is this a game that I want to play? And I think that's great. I honestly think that every game should do that. I mean, in my humble opinion, anyways. I mean, obviously, if you're looking to make money, don't ever give any content out to sell the game. EA, right? But anyways, going back to the previous comment about actually I kind of forgot. It was about the technology, I believe. What was that? What was exactly did you say, Auspicious?
Oh man, what did I say? Well, you're talking to a 2 second Sally here.
All right.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm. If
Oh,
you,
I remember. I remember. I remember. It was about like the Sea of Thieves, um, uh, Atlas, and yeah, I can't remember the other game. But basically, what I wanted to tie into this is a lot of these new games that you see coming out. They're not fresh ideas, right? They're maybe the 40,000, even that's an Eve thing, right? So they're not fresh. They're not fresh off the market, out of the ocean type ideas. They are games that could have been something awesome. Sea of Thieves, right? Eve, they're games that people have taken aspects from other games and made them into something that draws attention, because in our minds as players, we see, oh wow, that relates to Sea of Thieves, but better. Oh wow, that's Eve, but better, or it's something like, or this is Ark, but better. I think that's like one of the top comments I've seen about Atlas is this is Ark, but better. And I think that that's another reason that people buy into these early access games, is because they see this as games that they have enjoyed playing, that might not bring a 100% satisfactory gameplay to them. Like Sea of Thieves is awesome unless you want to do stuff other than fight, right? um, and I think that just draws in more and more people, as Fallout 76, for instance, right? Fallout has never done an MMOR, even though it was kind of a bust. They have never done that before, but they finally did it because they know that more and more people are enjoying playing these MMO type of games, right? Um, and that's just where it all comes. It's like a stream down the mountain, right? As Ella would like to hear, it's a waterfall. It's a waterfall effect, and I just think that is awesome. You know what I mean? It brings in the top qualities of games that we like to play and puts them all into one final game, one final product that we can all enjoy. So.
so you brought up something, and I've often wondered, because I never took the time to play Fallout 76. Like the community around it after release got. I don't know if it was a lack of outreach, like we've talked about, between the studio and the community, or if the game was just subpar. But you hear a lot of bad press about Fallout 76. Have either of you played it? What contributed to that the failure on, well, I don't want to say failure on release. I don't have a good
I would
place
say
to. Okay, failure on release. Well, two makes a consensus. But like what contributed to that, and what do we see different here?
Well, I personally have not played Fallout 76, but I've watched a ton of videos. I've watched a lot of streams, and it just seems like it's just like this. It's so blah. It's such a mess. And to me, Bethesda used to be one of my favorite companies. Like if you asked me about 3-4 years ago, if you asked me what my favorite company set was, I would say Bethesda wholeheartedly. But now I think Bethesda sold out, and there are reasons to. There's a lot of reasons to that. First, I think they were just released a just bad game. I mean, you take out NPCs, that's a huge amount of content, and they're just relying on, oh, people and their friends will just have fun killing NPCs, and then it just seems just sort of strange, and then the bugs galore. um and people were like, people were outraged about this, and it just was just not an unfinished game. It was not like, to me, it seemed like it was just a, I don't know, like a bad Rust reskinned in Fallout almost. It just wasn't very settling. They also had issues with they replaced canvas bags for their collector's edition, and thought it was going to go unnoticed, and they refused to give these canvas bags out. And then after enough uproar from the community, they finally gave in. They gave out excuses that it was too expensive, which is, and people were showing at $250 for these editions, and they got these trash bag, nylon bag type things. And now they're finally getting canvas, and it took them almost 2 weeks of just complaining to EA to actually get something. Um, originally. Funny, and then why I think they sold out was because they introduced this thing. They introduced microtransactions. Now these microtransactions didn't have anything to do about the game themselves, like they were just cosmetics, but it's how expensive they were and how just like this doesn't make any sense. Back to the canvas bag thing, they actually gave people these an in-game currency to buy these microtransactions, which was equivalent to $5, which is 500 atoms. And the irony of it was that those 500 atoms could not even been able to pay for the actual canvas bag in 76. So there's a little irony with that. And these microtransactions are extremely expensive, and instead of just giving out quality content and very filling story in these games, they cash out by giving out these microtransactions and hunting these white whales that are willing to shell out buku's amount of money for just an overpriced skin. And more and more companies are resulting into this, and it's a terrible market practice, and you end up using your fans.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I personally never played Fallout 76. I watched quite a bit of Twitch content on the game. I think that them taking out interactable NPCs was a huge mistake. They overbought into the whole MMO aspect. And again, the disclaimer is this is their first one. But compared to, let's say, Assassin's Creed Origin, which was, and again, it's not an MMO, but it's an RPG type game. It was a complete bust. It was a complete failure. They did think that there would be enough content within the player groups to pique interest, but for people who go in solo, who might just want to grind up and go attack other groups, 1v like 3 or something, just as an example, they didn't account for that, and that was their number one fuck up. I think that personally, going to the microtransactions, that's not something new. Might be something new to Bethesda, but then again, ESO has a shit ton as well. All cosmetic stuff. However, the price thing, again, giant loop. I think that the money, I just don't think the money is there the way it used to be. In fact, me personally, I think that games such as Fallout, at least if they continue down that track of MMOs type of game, I don't think they will release on PC as fast as they would on console in the future. I think that these major titles will have to resort to consoles to prevent basically the PC community is completely different, right? The only reason I say that is because we have access to games that are, like COE and Soulbound Studios. We have access to these other games that give us different opinions. Console gamers, they have completely different opinions from us because they have a limited source of games for them to play that are, moddable, that are, completely community driven, etc. They don't have that type of mentality as PC gamers. And again, I think personally, this is one of the reasons that Rockstar, other than not wanting to take away from their Grand Theft Auto title, I think that this is one of the reasons that they didn't release Red Dead Redemption completely on PC yet. I do believe it will come to PC at a later time, but I think that they stuck with the console because honestly, PC gamers bitch and complain a lot more than console gamers because we have a different opinion on how things should be operated because we have a larger table of games for us to play that are completely developed by indie studios, et cetera, and it just goes on from there.
Yeah, definitely the sorry. Is that my voice? Definitely the PC gamer market. Like, there's a lot more competition between titles. Like you have to have a niche, or you have to be a very high quality, or like you're how many games are there on Steam? Tens of thousands. In console, you're really you're more limited, and the degree of effort it takes for somebody to build a console game as opposed to a PC game. Like, there are different skill sets and there's different filters inside there. Um, but yeah, no, I think I definitely agree. They're different cultures.
Yep, and I'm not saying that PC is better than console. I actually quit playing console to focus all on PC because PCs are a lot more expensive. But you do see that consoles are fighting back. In fact, I read an article the other week that said in a year or two, PC gaming will be over because the new generation of consoles apparently are just as good as PC, like gaming PCs. So I'll be interested as technology advances. Everything changes. Um, hopefully, hopefully that doesn't disrupt COE, especially since we're on a still on a 2-year timeline. I think in 2 years, technology changes so much that it's almost incomprehensible. And if they are indeed developing a console that can actually compete with the gaming rigs, you could see some issues arise around the Steam community. I won't say PC community because, like you said, there's tens of thousands of games on Steam. So
Yeah, and I feel like every 2.5 years or so, we really see this claim that one genre, one group of gaming platforms are going to go out. Oh, now we've got Xbox 360 and PS2. Oh yeah, no PC, they're gone. Consoles are going to take over everything. And you see the next generation of PC, come out, and it's like, oh, look at all that power, and they've just been growing, and you kind of come these back and forth. People love to make these wide
well,
sweeping claims, but I've never seen them
let me
fulfilled.
let me add to that. So if you have a low end PC game or a gaming rig, streaming to Twitch and playing a game such as, let's just say a high FPS game, Siege, or just any other example. Really, even like Atlas is going to be tough on a low end, maybe even to mid grade rig if you're trying to stream and play the game at the same time. Consoles are able to do that as of now. Um, they might have what $100 extra for the high end console, but they're still what $500 to $600, which is kind of like a low end gaming rig, and they're able to stream live to Twitch while playing. So I don't necessarily think that the market will be compatible or will compete, but I do think that the technology end is coming a lot closer. I think that the next generation of console will be able to compete with a mid-tier gaming rig heavily when the next console generation comes out. At least on a technology standpoint, I don't think that they're going to have access to the amount of games that we do without, like, we'll just say jailbreaking or modding out your console or whatever. I'll be interested if they. I think that PlayStation and Xbox will start to, and you kind of already seen this with like their markets and stuff. And again, I haven't played console in over a year, so don't quote me on this. But I do think that in the next generation, those type of consoles will have almost like a Steam market where that indie games will become readily accessible to console players. That's just my theory. I'm a conspiracy theorist over here.
No, it was the Illuminati. Yes, yes, yes. Um, so I want to circle back on something and tie it in with Soulbound Studios. What we know about their market plans and what Caspian has said publicly. Sorry, what Caspian has said publicly about Chronicles of Elyria, and you talked about microtransactions. I know we were talking about them earlier, and how we feel about microtransactions, and what do they really mean, what do they do, and how do they support game development or game studios and whatnot. And that whole, oh, it's such a swear word. It's play to, or not play to win, sorry, play to win. We like play to win. Play to win's good, skill based competition. Pay to win, yeah, that's such a dirty word in the PC gaming and the console gaming communities. If you can get an edge by your socioeconomic status, like that's not taken very well amongst our gaming communities. And Caspian's come out and he's said very very explicitly that any benefits you would get from investing money after release, because they have to finance the game, and this is expensive. Development is expensive. Is going to go into anything cosmetic and nothing in terms of the playability of your game. How do we feel about Soulbound Studios' aversion to loot boxes, aversion to those sort of cash grab items in their actual game content? When we're not talking about things like right now, which arguably, how do you fund the development of your game to release?
I think that personally, I don't necessarily believe that. I don't think that they will have items on sale after release that give players an advantage. But I think that they will have. I personally believe that the store will still be full. To put it in simple terms, I think that, especially because I know that they tried last year to get a major developing team to basically buy into COE, and that didn't happen. So if that doesn't happen, even by the time this game launches, I think that the store will remain open. Obviously, Sparks of Life will, still be there, and that could be considered pay to win. That gives players who can spend $25 on more lives the opportunity to go out and explore more, to fight more, to die more easily, right? So I think that could be considered that. I think that certain animals, such as I know we have an elk on the store right now that's considered a mount. I don't see why those wouldn't be on the store, which again could be considered pay to win because of how long it takes to travel to places. I don't necessarily agree that there will be weapons or armor or any of that kind of stuff on the store. I don't think that will happen. But I think that there will be items on the store even after launch that do give not necessarily a egregious advantage to players, but that do give some sort of, hey, you got 20 sparks of lives, go out there and explore. You only got two, be a blacksmith. You know what I mean? Don't risk your life. I think that will happen, and it could cause a little bit of an uproar, not immediately, but as communities, if someone gets tired of being the local blacksmith and is like, man, on my next character, I'd really like to go out and explore, but I can't afford to have these sparks of lives where if I die, exploring or fighting these awesome epic beasts, out in the world, there's no point, you know what I mean? And I think that will become an issue that will have to be addressed. But, obviously that's still, in my opinion, a good ways out. So.
Amron, do you have thoughts on this?
No, not really. I mean, most of what I thought was already said, so not really much to really expand on.
Yeah. So I guess you've swayed me a bit with your persuasive speech there, Alamore. I can see what you're talking about. Some of the ability to pay money for Sparks of Life and that market model that COE has used. I don't know if you guys ever played PlanetSide or PlanetSide 2. I love that game. Far too many hours sunk into that FPS, but it's one of the more aggressive pay to win like platforms that I've seen while still being competitive. You get access to a weapon that's its stats are obviously better than the ones that you take hours and hours and hours to grind out to and stuff like that. But like you said, I don't think they're going to be gracious. They're not going to be overpowered in such a way that you can go into the store and purchase your way after launch into godhood. Right. We can in other pay to win like games. If you ever played Travian, great example right there.
Yeah, well, how I see it happening is, this type of community is very close. We talk a lot to each other. So the way I see it happening is, and again, I just want to go ahead and give the kind of solution to this problem would be to drop the price of Sparks of Lives a little bit. Maybe I think I've seen maybe like $10 or something like that for a life. But the problem's going to be, it's going to arise when players get into the game world, and we're all going to go into this world with our idea of what we want to do. But since our characters live, or are supposed to live, unless they die or get sick, etc., for a year, right, or almost a year, right, you might not see this issue arise until a year, because players are probably going to play blacksmith if you want to be a blacksmith for that entire year, because it might take that long to get to the max tier. So we're going to be occupied, trying to level, trying to get this gear for other people, that type of thing. Once the conflict really starts to come into this game, and by conflict I mean player, player and player conflict, such as other kingdoms, duchies, counties, even sheriffs and deviant tunes. Once that starts to come into play, and people have kind of settled into the game, that blacksmith might want to pick up a sword. And if for instance, if me as a count, if I have to go to my town and say, hey guys, rally the troops, we're going to war, and my blacksmith is supposed to be called into this, right, called into action, but he's only got one spark of life left, and he might not be in the socioeconomic segment as some of us. He's going to be like, dude, I can't come. And where does that issue come? Like, where does that issue lead us? You know what I mean? Whereas me being a count who's sworn to protect the Duchess, and I come back to her saying, hey, I've got 5 people because my other 15 guys can't afford a spark of life if they die, and they don't want to come. Like, that's when the issue starts to come up. Or when people come back to their towns and say, hey, I just slayed this beast, out here exploring. And he's like, man, I'd love to do that, but I can't, because I can't afford a $25 spark of life, or let's just say $100 for 4, because, you don't want to risk losing everything. That's when it's going to start to really hit the community kind of hard. Right now, it's kind of looked as like a subscription, right? So like if you buy a spark of life, that's supposed to last you a year. So you're technically spending $100 or $25 a year, but that it's not always going to be that way. So.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up some good points inside that. I'm gonna have to start getting off the stream pretty soon here, but I want to circle back to what you say, just so that we're setting expectations accordingly for the people who are viewing. And I think it'd be really interesting. We intend to do more of these in the Ancient Grove, community topics, and allow our Aratarians to jump in and talk about what they feel, what they like, and what they want. But our spark of life, like you said, that's an expected year of gameplay with deaths included. As far as our information has been given to us by Soulbound Studios, there's multiple forms of death and different risks you take in life, and I think there'll be a really interesting conversation in the future here to talk about what does the coup de grace do, and if you're stunned and knocked out and you lose some spirit energy, what does that mean for the playability of your character, or the life of your character, and all these other things. I think that's a really good segue into our next Ancient Grove discussion, and stuff like that.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get us to our goodbyes here, just so my wife doesn't take my head off when she arrives and says we need to leave. But before we get to those heartfelt goodbyes, it is the season to spend 20 minutes saying goodbye, or at least it is in my culture. I want to say a few things. I want to do a few shout outs. I'm transitioning over to a quick image that we've got. So this is a piece of art by our own Glenn Cooper. He has submitted a few of these, and I keep harassing him for more art. A huge fan of Mr. Cooper's there, such that I really like seeing these art pieces grow and encouraging him and his endeavors. And so this is one he took of the continent N, I believe, with the different races where they're expected to be located and everything like that. And then here now we've got one with the kingdom of Vornair. across the two different kingdoms and the duchy lines and all that stuff. And he really does a great job at showing or putting personality into the information that the Soulbound Studios cast releases to us in terms of those images, those maps, and putting some community created content behind them. And then of course, last of all here, and that's far too small. Let's make that bigger. Last of all here is the Conclave of Aratar and our kingdom location, and things that we're expecting in terms of this, and the art he's created with the different duchies and different. And I just I'm gushing over you, Glenn, if you're listening. And stuff like that. But really, we appreciate every bit of effort that our community members go into to create art, to create content for the community, and say, hey, this is something that I put my time, I put my energy into, and I really enjoy being able to showcase those for us. This is the last one here, created by Asen. We were handing these out at PAX East. Oh, not this last PAX East, but the one before that, little Conclave of Aratar business card, and I think she printed out a few hundred of them, and Sneeze, and they're like glitter at that gaming convention. You saw them all over. They were really cool. They were really great to release and to give away. And really bring people to be aware of Soulbound Studios, the Kingdom of Vornair, the Chronicles of Elyria. Let's try this. Oh, look at, there we go. Back to where we were, Grove View. Sorry about that, everybody. I was talking my nose off, and nobody could hear me because I was in the wrong scene. Um, my fault. Just the way that I set things up, and I showed a number of pictures there about Glenn, and I don't remember where we were at in terms of those pictures and what you heard and what you didn't hear. So I'm gonna go through the whole spiel all over again. Really sorry about the drop in noise, the drop in sound. Um, but the images that we were looking at, the scene 2 images here, and we should have, see, like seeing two images, the conclave, the image, the whatnot, and like I said, I don't know what you heard and what you didn't hear. Those are contributions by community members, and we're really excited and glad that our community members come out and they give effort towards these things, these pieces of art. If you really want to be involved in the community, if you want to learn new things, feel free to reach out to your elder teams. This might all be deja vu if I was talking and you heard me, or if I was talking and you didn't hear me. I'm very sorry about that once again. But reach out to your elder team, get involved in the communities, whether you're here in the conclave, a part of the greater foreign air community. Adam Burfoot does a number of streams. Listen in, get involved. If you're part of Boardwell, if you're part of Oceania, it doesn't matter where you are, what part of what community you're a part of. Really, we're excited to work together, to talk, to include each other when it comes to the game, the Chronicles of Elyria, and behaving as a community does. Yeah. So if you want to discuss, if you want to talk about, things in the ancient grove, like we've been doing, do reach out, do reach out, do go and talk to us here in the the Conclave 360 channel, and we'll reach out. Like I said, we'll next time we'll be talking about things like sparks of life, and what does that mean for you as an Illyrian, and how do we expect that to work out, and what do we know from the developers in terms of their market strategy and what the spark of life means. And we've been answering these questions here at the conclave to new recruits, and we hope to really answer that for all of you going forward. So that should be an exciting conversation, and if you want to be involved, I will post, hopefully 24 hours before we start this conversation, I will post a link saying, hey, this is what we're talking about, this is the area, and keep us more or less on topic. This has been Conclave 360. I've been your host, Auspicious. We've been very happy to have Count Alamore and Elder Amory here to talk with us about early access and community expectations. So till next time, folks, stay true to yourselves and stay active. Goodbye.